G'day guys, and welcome to the first video in my gardening series. I'm just working on a veggie patch here. Before I go any further talking about it though, I just want to mention that I'm definitely no gardening expert. In fact, if you've got novice here, I'm even further down below that. I've done very little gardening, grown a few tomatoes before, and I've got another little veggie patch that I'll show you in another video that's just coming on now. But yeah, this series I'm going to really focus on this one. It's a new venture for me, so it's nearly 3 by 4 meters, so it's a fair sized veggie patch. Originally I was going to get a corrugated iron raised bed like I've got round the other side, but I decided that it was quite expensive for a small garden bed, and the other one is quite frustrating to try to grow too much in. So I've gone much cheaper here. I've just found timber lying around home and I'm using old tent pegs to pin it in. And yeah, going to dig up this stretch of lawn here, which you can see I've started boxing up. And then get in a bit of topsoil just to level it out and get better quality soil. And yeah, got to dig up the rest of this lawn. You can see this bush over the back here. I've really hacked that up because it had lots of grass growing up underneath it. And I've got to net this in because we've got possums and wallabies and birds and everything around here get straight into your veggies. So I've got to net it in, and the netting will probably finish straight along there. So I really didn't want all the grass growing up into the netting and really hard spot to get to. So I've really weeded hard through there and yeah, hacked that bush, which I'm not too fussed about. I think it'll grow back fine. It's a pretty hardy thing. I've sort of hit it with the lawnmower before and it comes back pretty healthy. And if it doesn't, I'm not really too fussed, to be honest. So my main plan for this is corn and carrots. Now it's not the time of year for corn and carrots here in Tasmania right now, but I'm going to get it all ready and maybe put something in there over winter, just see how it goes. But my main focus is corn and carrots. At the minute, the sun's hitting it at about 10 in the morning. I've got a few big trees here that were blocking it, or it would have hit it an hour or two early, so I'm thinking I might actually trim the top of those out anyway, just to get it some more sun, because my other spot's not overly sunny either, so I really want this to be a sunny spot. And yeah, that's about all the plans I got. So the idea of this video series is to show you step by step what's going on here. And obviously, as I said, I'm new to gardening, so I'm going to make lots of mistakes, and hopefully you guys can learn from them. And if you are a more experienced gardener, I'd love your feedback, tips and advice. Throw it in the comments. I'd really appreciate the help along the way. Obviously I'm using the internet and I'm researching, but I'd love that first-hand knowledge. If you've got anything to share, anything even at this stage you think I maybe haven't thought about in setting this up, yeah, that's about it. So my main plan for this was, and still is, to just fork it over and turn all the grass over into it and let it die off, and just keep turning it back into the soil. However, I was just sort of weeding where the edge pillar is going to be so that there's not heaps of grass caught up in it. And the grass here is coming up really easy. I've got this, which I believe was a 3-prong rake or whatever you call the tool, but it's now just a hook. And yeah, around these stumps, just digging them out, roots and all, pretty easy. And particularly all through here that I've already done, it was like a mat. It was just rolling up in one big mat, but it sort of becomes more tuffets, I've lost the word, of grass rather than a mat, so it might get a little harder. But yeah, it's certainly just going to do along here where I'm going to be putting this edge piece of timber in, just so the grass isn't growing up all around the edge there. So this is where I'm currently at. I've done a lot of digging through the garden, getting out all the rocks and roots, a number of quite large rocks which I've used as part of my barrier here. Some big ones through here that I've dug out, one there. So yeah, got them out, particularly through the middle where I plan to plant carrots, because obviously the rocks are going to get in the way of their growth. So yeah, really gone through that, and then I've just raked through getting out more of the smaller rocks and roots, and I'm pretty happy with it. I think I'm ready for later in the week when I am going to get a load of topsoil to go on top of this, just to raise it up a little bit more. Once you dig down a bit of a ways, 20-30 centimeters depending on the spot, it does actually become clay. So I would presume the ground here is clay, and what you see on the top here has been brought in for the lawn. So yeah, this more soil I bring in will just raise us up that bit further off the clay. Actually decided this along the back here is going to go, which is the next job I'm going to be doing. So I'm going to pull all them out. I did say I was going to try to save them, and I just weeded underneath them, but then my wife mentioned she didn't like them anyway, and I was thinking about the bird netting that I plan on putting over is going to have to go down to the far side of that, so they're too high, they're in the way anyway. So I'm going to clear them out, and that little corner there I'm going to leave that beam there still, and I'm just going to make a little herb garden around that back corner there, put in some perennial herbs, so rosemary and thyme and that, yeah, in a little herb corner there. So the next plan is to rip that out and get that ready, and then it's Easter Monday today, so it's a public holiday anyway. I couldn't get the topsoil in, but later in the week I'm gonna get that in and yeah, get him all ready. And we're still waiting on the bird netting and some of the seeds themselves to come, so there's no real hurry right now. It's just yeah, really making sure I get it all ready, not cutting corners, getting as best we can. Alright guys, so I'm ready for my soil that should be here in the next little while to go on top. As you can see, it's 1 in the afternoon right now, and the majority of the bed is in sunlight, but it is the next job I'm going to do is a bit of pruning of the trees around, which should open up this side and get a bit more light in there. You can hopefully see in the shadow there's a beam there. So this is where those pink flowers were on this side, and that's where I'm going to put my herbs in. I've cleared that out this morning. Lots of rocks all through there. It was obviously originally like the edge of the garden bed, and the soil sort of over time grown over the top. So yeah, there was heaps of rocks in there, so it was good to clear that out. And I ended up ordering a little more soil than I was originally going to, just to help fill that out and make sure I've definitely got enough. Which, if my maths is correct, I will, but we'll find out a bit later. You can see I've got this bit of cardboard here. I've been laying that out when I'm not working in it, just to hopefully kill off a bit more of the stuff that's there. And I think I'm actually going to put it where there's going to be a bit more of the fresh soil on top, and actually bury it, just to help stop weeds coming through at least part of the garden. And yeah, we'll see how it goes. So getting the topsoil in ended up being a bloody big job. Hardest part of the whole thing, I reckon. First off, because I ordered 2.5 cubic meters, because I was worried 2 wouldn't be enough, but in honesty, 1.5 probably would have been enough. But I raised up the garden bed more, so it was sort of a bonus. But the big problem I had is I got out my wheelbarrow, which I haven't used for a long time, and the wheel was flat, pumped it up, and then I probably did 6 to 10 runs with it. And real quick, no problem, got a fair chunk of the soil out, and then the tyre went flat again. Tried to pump back up, and it was just stuffed. It wouldn't pump up. I tried to do it without the wheel, just on the rim, and that wasn't working. So I ended up with this bin, I don't know, maybe a 50 litre bin, I guess, on a removalist trolley, dragging that around the house. So a lot more bending than with the wheelbarrow, and then having to pick that up at the end and tip it out. So a lot more work on my back, and especially because one part going around the house to get there is small pebbles, so it really sinks in. So yeah, it was real heavy going, and I was working into the night by torchlight getting it done, and then still had to get more done the next day. So it was a really big job, really buggered me, but we got there. Alright, so the new veggie patch is all done, guys, as you can see behind me. I'm glad I said in the first place that I was going with doing it as cheap as possible and it wasn't to look good, because as you can see, it's nothing fancy, but it's practical and it's functional, and yeah, I think it's going to work just fine. So because I ended up ordering way more soil than I needed, because I really didn't have a clue, to be honest, the amount I needed, I was actually able to raise it up a bit higher again, so that's really good. And then I also had leftover soil to fix up a few other gardens, so that worked out all right. As you can see, I've put the netting roof on. It's not quite as high as I wanted, and that's because I kind of made the mistake of pegging it out first and then trying to lift it up, and I didn't give myself enough length. But it's fine, it's high enough for now, but perhaps in the spring, before I get the corn going, I might move the sides in a little bit and just get that top a little higher. In the middle, I've got it pulled up enough that it's not hitting my head, and the rest of it I can stand up straight, but I'm feeling the roof on my head. So yeah, it's about 6 foot high at the minute, which is going to be fine for the broad beans and obviously the lettuces and that I've got in. But yeah, I might have to just rig it up a little different for the corn. So as well as the net, I bought these little U-shaped pegs. I got 100 of them for, I think it was like $22 or something like that. And so that's what I've pegged it out with the whole way around. I've used nearly all of them, so about 95 pegs going around the edge, so there's basically no gaps. I do have a bandicoot that gets in this garden, so yeah, quite a small animal that can squeeze through pretty small holes, so I really wanted to make sure he couldn't get in there, so it's really solidly pegged down. And then my entranceway is nothing fancy. I'm just going to lower you down here. You can see I've got the 3 roofing tiles, which is originally how I had the whole thing pegged down. And so this is the one spot that isn't pegged with those pegs. And I just lift those 3 tiles off there, and then I've got all this loose net which I can hook up over that post. And you can see I got a fair size entrance there. I just got to duck down a little bit, but I can carry different things in. I've still got some bags of compost sitting there. Yeah, but that's my entranceway. It's big enough for me to get in and get stuff through it, and just nice and quick and easy to open and shut. I can just drop it down behind me when I'm inside there so the dog doesn't come in, because she's taken a real fancy to the fertilizer. So yeah, good to keep her out. And that's the garden. One other little thing I did work on, which I'll just adjust you guys again, see if we can see it here, is I did a bit of pruning. Where are we? Around a bit more. Sorry, I'm confusing myself, hang on. Get behind the camera. Yep. So you can see this tree up here. I've left one tall bit, but I've taken some height out here, and I've taken this whole middle out and a little bit of height out over this side as well, which is letting the sun get onto this veggie garden about an hour earlier in the morning. Being autumn at the minute, sun wasn't hitting the garden until around 10 o'clock. So yeah, it's getting on there a little bit earlier, and yeah, it was obviously a bit patchy as the sun's coming around here. So it's just a bit clear. I didn't want to cut them out all together. They're blackwood trees, so they're natives. The parrots and that do come and sit in them. So yeah, I wanted to leave them there, but I just took a lot of the foliage out just to let more sun get down here. In the spring and summer, it won't be such an issue, because obviously the sun will be going in a different trajectory in the sky. It should get a lot more of the sun during the day. But for this time of year, I just wanted to get that little bit more sun onto the garden. Now, I actually did finish this nearly 2 weeks ago now. It's taken me a little while to get this last bit of the footage for this video done. So I actually already planted in here. So you can see the plank which goes over halfway along there, bit of a path, and then there's also this brick out here as a bit of a paver that I can step to get into this far end, and I can fit inside the net along this edge as well to get along the outside. And though not as comfortable, there is room between the net and the start of the garden around the back there as well, so I can get round the outside to get to things on those sides. But anyway, so to the end of that piece of wood coming along this line, all that there's broad beans. It's got 4 rows of 10 on that side, and so yeah, 40 in there. Most of them are the Coles Dwarf. but I also put in 10 of a second variety, and I've forgotten the name of those. I might make it pop up on the bottom of the screen for you. But yeah, I just put a few different ones in, see how they go and if they're any different. And then the same on the other side, though actually not quite up to the plank. There's another 40 in that side, which are the dwarf coals again. So mostly the dwarf coals in there. And then in the very far corner, sort of in front of this rock here, I've just put in 12 or so giant radishes, giant German radishes, I believe they are. So just a few radishes in there. To be honest, my family doesn't eat radishes much, but I wanted to give a few a go. So yeah, they're all in there. And then there's also 4 or 5 different kinds of lettuces, a bit of kale and a bit of chives, and they're mostly mixed. So yeah, it's not all in rows and that, it's sort of just all over the place there. See what comes up. And then I've got a bit of spinach and bok choy that I'm going to put in another week or so. When I see where the gaps are, I'll throw a few more seeds in there. So that'll just be a real mixed garden down that end through the autumn and winter, and then we'll plant some other things in the spring. But yeah, the radishes are already coming up, some of the lettuces are coming up, and I've got one bean that I've noticed starting to shoot today. So yeah, garden's all coming along, and I plan on keeping you guys updated on how things go, what goes wrong and what goes good. Alright guys, as always, really appreciate some feedback and you guys getting interactive, so jump in the comments, let me know anything you think I may have done wrong that I could have done differently, questions you might have about how I went about building this garden or what my plans are for the future. Yeah, let's start a conversation down in the comments. If you like the video, let me know by giving it the thumbs up, and yeah, subscribe to the channel to get all the updates on my garden. Thanks for watching guys.